What's up, y'all? It's Izzy, and today we are back with another episode of So You Think You Want to Build a Skoolie. And this is for all of you guys out there who are still really considering whether or not you want to build a Skoolie, if you want to go through with the build yourself, if that is feasible for you, and for those of you who may or may not have just bought a Skoolie and you're wondering, like, what are the tools I need to get started? So let's get into the video. The reason it looks like such a mess around me is because I have things laid out here and here that I'm going to be picking up. Some of these things are like super self-explanatory and you're like, oh, why are you showing that? Because I just like visual aids. And some of the things I actually don't have in here with me, so maybe I'll post stock images around just for kicks and giggles so you guys can be like, yeah, that's what she's talking about. Sometimes, you know, like people call things by like 5 different names and it's easier just to see it than me to like just list it off to you. So there are a number of basic tools that you will need, and I will call this the basic tool section. So first and foremost, screwdrivers. You're going to need both Phillips and flathead screwdrivers because flatheads make really good at prying where you can't get other things in to pry. And most of the screws in my bus were Phillips heads, and that will probably be the case with like a lot of buses. But there might be some flathead screws out there, you never know, so it's good to have those on hand. I'm sure everyone already has those in their junk drawer, if not in their toolkit. Other things that proved their worth right off the bat for me were, of course, crowbars. I already had this one on hand. My grandparents brought this one up when they were working. I think this is actually from the Dollar Tree, so it was very useful dollar. And of course, a good old hammer. Now this is a ball peen hammer. Evidently these pack more of a punch than a regular hammer, that's what I'm told. But definitely have this or a regular hammer on hand. Maybe you will need them. Tape measure, of course. I personally like this tape measure. If you're that sounded like so bad. I personally like this tape measure, and you might want to try to find one like this if you're new to cutting and everything, because it has all of the little. Let me see if I can get it to focus. Come on, focus on me up. This doesn't want to focus, but sure you can see it from here. It has all like the little measurements on there. So if you maybe aren't familiar with what all those little lines and marks means, this helps you out really a lot when you're first going into learning how to measure stuff. And yeah, I like it a lot. When I look at this one, it gives me anxiety because it's not marked. And this one also has centimeters on it, so that's a whole different ball game. And then two of the things I don't have out here, I would look into getting a wrench set and a ratchet set because you will need those to take the seats out, and you will need those to take various other things out along the bus, because not everything in the bus that is put up uses screws, like the rear view mirror or the fan, a couple other things, and even some of the self-tapping screws that they'll put in different places. Especially I noticed with the emergency exit up top of my bus, they use the screws that have you know, like the nut-shaped heads, bolt-shaped heads. I would also recommend you invest in some drill bits. They have a nice set, I know, at Harbor Freight for a pretty decent price. They have broken on us fairly easily, especially when you're drilling into metal, so just be aware of that. Maybe you want to invest in some better ones for particular tasks that you know you're going to be using them a lot for. And also just get you a bunch of different bits. These technically aren't made for drills, so it can be a little bit challenging when you're using them, but it's nice just to have a couple on hand because there can be a lot of different sizes of Phillips heads, flat heads, and square heads, and all kinds of different stuff in the bus. It's just nice to have some extra. Also, other types of drill attachments that you might want to look into getting to are a set of hole saws like this. I know I use those in my ceiling, and I was going to use them in the side of the bus, but I mean, there wasn't really a point, and I'm probably going to end up having to use them again for plumbing. Another alternative to hole saws are these. I don't know if they're actually called hole saws or if they're called something different, but they do all the same. They make a hole, like a cylindrical hole. These go up to like 1.5 inches, and some of the hole saws you can buy specifically for like bigger measurements, I believe, if you need them in a certain size. And then another item, which I do not have out here either, are pliers. I would come out here and I would start working and I'd be like, man, I need a set of pliers. And I would go in the house and I'd get some sometimes and I'd come back out and I wouldn't have them again. It was just seemed like every time I turned around I needed a set of pliers, specifically like needle nose pliers. Those would have been very helpful, and some things I did extremely difficult just because I was too lazy to get up out of the bus and walk back up the hill to my house to go get another set. And so I almost forgot about this little dude, but a scraper is very useful in a bus. I actually got this one from the Dollar Tree too. I liked it because it had a lot of different like angles and attachments, and I thought it would be kind of useful. It actually hasn't turned out to be all that grand, so maybe just get a regular scraper and not be like me and try to have a funky scraper. I'm sure it'll come in handy. It says it pulls nails, cleans cracks, cleans rollers, opens paint cans, and scrapes away old debris and paint. So, you know, it's a good multi-tool, but invest maybe in not so much of a multi-tool if you just need it for scraper purposes. So besides the crowbars, I feel like those are a lot of things that you guys might already have on hand. If you have like a tool collection, or even some things you might already have on hand in your junk drawer. So that shouldn't be too big of a deal to figure out and find out. Next set, we're going on to power tools. I'm talking about, of course, like smaller power tools. You might already have some of these, especially if you do your own like handiwork around the house. So what I could not recommend you investing in more is a drill. My dad got this set for Christmas and I've been borrowing them from him, but he got a drill and an impactor too. I do not have the impactor with me, but basically it's like shorter and it packs a bigger punch than this one. But it's probably good to invest in a good set of battery powered drills. If you can't afford to invest in a good set, then I would definitely recommend you invest in a plug-in drill. I mean, it doesn't have to be as fancy as this one. I think this one's one of the more expensive ones. It's a Milwaukee. This is on loan from my papa. It really has a lot of power to it. This is what I've been using to put the self-tapping screws into the bus, and it's definitely something to have on hand if you have rivets in your bus which you need to drill out. So cannot recommend you getting this enough if you can't afford battery powered drills, but it's good to have both on hand as well because these can kind of get annoying to lug around. Now moving along to something that might be a little less common for those of you guys who especially don't do handiwork around the house, or you don't have your own kind of tool collection, and that is a jigsaw. So these are super handy if you do not know about them already. They're really easy to put in kind of like tight spaces to cut out things, like even this right here. Part of this I had to use the jigsaw on to just finish it, to finish cutting it out. So it's just really good to have on hand to get into tight spaces and various things. So it's just a really good tool to have on hand if you need to cut in tight spaces that you otherwise can't use the big saw for, or you don't want to get the big saw out for. So now we're getting on a little bit more to like the big boy tools and things that you will need. So it probably would come in handy if you had some sort of grinder. My grinder is on loan right now, so I can't show you it, but I will show you a picture of what I mean when I say I'm adverse to the sight of sparks, and I personally don't like these, but they would be really good if you need to brush up the floors in some places. That's what my stepdad used when he was helping me with the floors to do that. But otherwise, if you're adverse to the sight of sparks and you need to cut metal, I have an option for you, do not worry. But a reciprocating saw, my family calls it like a sawzall sometimes. It doesn't have the blades in it. These are what the blades look like for it, and she's a little bit of a powerful tool, but could not recommend more if you need to cut into the side of your bus or something and you do not want to see sparks flying everywhere as they're out to go. We use this to cut the bolts off in my bus too. So now to get to a little bit of a, I would say, bigger power tool. So if you're doing like big building and stuff. Now this is one that I haven't actually used yet, which is weird to say. Like I've been used on the build, but like I've never used it before. My dad's just always been the one to cut it, and I've been helping him hold the boards. That's kind of how it's worked for a really long time since I've been doing projects. But that is a circular saw, or a skill saw. I guess that's what it's called because it says it on here, and some people call it a skill saw. I've heard it called a skill saw before. But this is definitely something that you would need to use if you're cutting big panels, which you probably will be, especially if you're doing the floors and stuff in your bus. So invest in one of these as well. When you're cutting boards and different things, you probably could use a circular saw to do that, but honestly, like I don't feel like it's very accurate. Like for me, I don't feel comfortable naming accuracy with a circular saw, I would definitely recommend going with something like a table saw, which is what I use all the time, or a miter saw. We have both at our house. I have easier access to the table saw, and the table saw that we have has a miter attachment for it, so I really don't ever really need to get the miter saw out. And because I've been splitting 2x4s so often for this build, it's just been a lot easier to use the table saw, which splitting 2x4s like I do is something you can't do with the miter saw. So if you think that's something you want to do and it comes down to you either getting to purchase a miter saw or a table saw, I would definitely recommend getting a table saw with the miter attachment on it, which I will show you guys later. And maybe I'm talking over the footage right now, oopsies. The reason that I talk a lot about miter saw, a miter attachment, miters are what you can use, or like a miter saw is what you can use to cut corners. So I think they call it like mitering corners, which is basically like when you cut 45-degree angles and butt them up to one another so that they fit flush and nice. I think that's what they say, mitered corners. I could be really wrong, but all I know is that you use miter saws to cut angles, and the only drawback that I have with my table saw that is different with our miter saw is with the miter saw it has a laser, so it comes down and shows you exactly where you're cutting, and with the table saw you have to be a little bit more conscientious about how you're sliding it through and where you're putting the blade, which once you do a couple cuts you'll kind of get used to how the blade takes off like a 1/16 of an inch and how you need to place the line so that you get the cut at the exact length that you need it. But a 1/16 of an inch is not a lot either, so potato. That's my spiel on if you need help choosing between the two, or if you need help choosing between the two, what I recommend. Here's just a little bit of an honorable mention. Of course you're gonna need screws to put together your bus, but if you're planning on using nails in a lot of places, I know I've used nails on the ceiling to put my trim on, and when you put trim up you might be using nails. But if you're planning on using nails in a lot of locations, it might be worth it to you to invest in like a small air compressor and a nail gun. I know a nail gun for me has been like a blessing because I hate hammering, well, I shouldn't say I hate hammering nails in anymore because I've gotten a lot better at it. But yeah, putting in like little brats, like little nails, like little brads and stuff, it's just so much easier with a nail gun. So if you have the extra money to splurge on that and you're going to be doing a lot of nailing, is that what it's called? If you're going to be putting a lot of nails in your bus, then I would definitely recommend investing in something like that. It will make your life a lot easier. If I come up with any more things that I feel like you really would need for the bus build, I will add that to a list below in the description, and sometime in the near future I will also have a Google Docs linked down below that has a list of all these tools on it, if you would like to go look at them, and probably links to the things that I have if you would like to go purchase the same thing or a similar thing, because some things, you know, I can't like link directly to. Like the odds of me finding where this tape measure came from are like slim to none at a reasonable price, just the way the world works. But with all that being said, if you all have any things that you think are essentials that you need for building, please be sure to leave those down below. As always, I make these videos for people who don't have any clue what they're doing in this case, or kind of know what they're doing and then just getting their foot in the door, which if you're doing that, you probably already have a lot of these things, but that's just what it is. My opinion's not the end all be all opinion. I want to put that disclaimer in every video so people can't be angry with me. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'm going to go before I lose my mind. Bye! Oh, don't forget to subscribe. I always forget to say that. Anyways, you know, here's my outro.